All right. Good evening. I call to order this March meeting of the Public Works Commission. Commissioner Grayson, would you please do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, I would. Please rise as you are able. Hand over heart. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Andrew, can we do roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Britton,
Present.
Vice Chair Gretton,
Here.
and Chairperson Hayes.
Here.
We have Commissioner Dunbabin absent, and currently Commissioner Levoy as well.
Okay. Moving on to approval of the agenda. So I was of mind to try to move up the tree item. I really wish we knew if Thor was going to be here, because if he is, I'd rather have the full panel. If he's not, then we can do it. So
I would support that. I would move both the tree and the pavement up above the other reports.
I don't see the need to move the pavement up, but I would like to, I mean, we've got people from the public here for the tree.
Okay.
So I mean, to me, the pavement is
Well,
this
so
way
we
or
got a
the
staff
other.
here for the payment, right? Yeah.
So I guess the question, Mr. City Attorney, is can we, start with the agenda, and then, if, I don't know, if we get through the director's report and Commissioner Legvold shows up, then move up the item, or do we need to establish when we want to do the tree item right now?
As chair, you can you can make a motion to amend the agenda.
Okay.
In the middle.
I would really, because we have audience here for both that and the pavement, I make a motion, we move those two items up before the director's reports. Is there a second?
You can change the direction.
So
later.
I don't have a problem with moving both up, but I would like, what I don't want to happen is we get halfway through and then he's heard half of the testimony and then, is he out? I'd rather have a fuller panel if possible. But we don't know where he is. So what I would propose would be there's no presentations, correct? So announcements will be quick.
So my motion dies for lack of a second.
Yes, motion dies for lack of a second. But what I would suggest is, let's say the director's update will take a little bit of time. I would support your motion, but move it between 7A and B instead of, that gives him a little bit more time to get here.
My feeling, if he's not here now, he's not coming. Have we been able to check with him or hear from him? Okay.
So I think it's moving things, it's, up somewhat, but giving us the best chance of having a full panel.
So you're saying move the tree item up between items
7A and B.
7 and 8?
7A and 7B.
7A and 7B. Okay, I will change my motion to, I move that we move up the tree item up between item 7A and 7B.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Can we have a vote?
Voting should be open.
I don't have a computer.
Then I'll call for your vote. Commissioner Britton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Hang on.
Should we still use the electronic if we have our computers? Oh,
I will mark it for, and I will mark it for Commissioner Britton.
Mine is saying vote in progress, but it doesn't have the normal. There we go.
Oh,
I submitted.
motion passes to move item, the public hearing for the tree between item 7A and 7B.
Great. Okay. Moving on. Next on the agenda is announcements. Does any commissioners have any announcements? I do not either. So moving on, we have no presentations. So we'll move on to the Public Works Director's update.
Chair Hayes, just one moment. We're going to pull up a couple quick slides. Okay, so to start tonight, the LA County Library has started construction work as of Monday, earlier this week, on ADA improvements to our Hermosa Beach facility. These are expected to last a few months. They had received grant funding in order to do a complete renovation and update to the restrooms to meet current ADA standards, and they're also updating the automated doors on the north and south side of the building. So that work has begun. The library does intend to remain open throughout. There's a very small chance that they may need to do a short shutdown to accommodate a water shutoff issue during construction, but they are trying to avoid any closures at all costs. And if they do need to do it, it should be fairly minimal, maybe a day or two. But they'll continue to give us updates as they go. So they will remain open throughout. Parking impacts are fairly limited to about 1 or 2 spaces in the City Hall parking lot, in the dedicated library parking spaces, and they do have temporary restroom facilities. They're now currently stationed at the south side of the building, where they previously were bike racks, just outside of the building. So that will be the condition over the next few months. And then, I did want to give just a alert about ongoing issues with at the beach. We are in coordination with the Marine Mammal Care Center. Oh, there we go, get the right slide. There is a domoic acid toxicosis issue right now in the water, and so there are unfortunately some sea lions washing up. Just as a public message, I will encourage folks to not go near any animals that you see on the beach. If you do see them, there is a rescue hotline that I show here, 1-800-39-WHALE, where you can call, and the Marine Mammal Care Center will try to come out to help these animals, but I do recommend don't go near them because there is some danger. They recommend at least keep 50 feet away. It's something that we are monitoring coordination with them and LA County lifeguards, but it is something that they think is worse than it was a couple years ago and could last for several more weeks. So just for awareness as you go out to our beach. And then finally, I want to give an update with Public Works team has actively been working with Cal Water for several months now on the ongoing water main replacement project on Bayview Drive. This is from 2nd to 8th Street. They've concluded all the major work. They were just wrapping up some of the box cover adjustments on the street. We also had to coordinate that with LA County Sanitation District project that overlapped with that. That effort is now complete as well. And we are tentatively set to do final resurfacing work on Bayview. It would be a full grind and overlay of Bayview Drive. We're tentatively looking at the week of April 7th to complete that work. And additional notifications will go out to that neighborhood once it's final and confirmed. But that's what we're looking at right now to conclude that project. And those are my short updates tonight. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions to my left? To my right? Just real quick on the Bayview resurfacing, is that part of the water project or is that part of the street improvement project?
It's all part of the Cal Water project. So they were going to do restoration, but there were so many lateral connections and the major work that they did that it was we did require a full grind and overlay. Otherwise, it would have been a lot of patchwork.
Okay, thank you. I guess that brings us to, no, we said we're moving the tree to between 7A and B.
Correct.
So I guess we are moving on to item 12, request to remove a tree in the public right-of-way at 2122 Monterey Boulevard. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is. Thank you, Chairperson Hayes. So while we load up a short presentation, so this is for the request to remove a tree that exceeds 12 inches in diameter in front of 2122 Monterey Boulevard as part of a residential redevelopment project at that property. All right, so the tree is shown here on the right-hand side of the photo. As part of the improvements on the property, the property owner is working to remove some of the non-conforming encroachments from the public right-of-way. All the area from the brick wall on the left-hand side of the photo to the right-hand side where the fence is in the public right-of-way. There's a large encroachment area behind the sidewalk. And in order to remove those encroachments, they do have to pull back the retaining wall and the staircase that does encroach into the property. The tree does exceed 12 inches diameter, so it does require a public hearing for removal. Staff worked to issue notifications within a 350-foot notice, a radius of the area, and we also posted a notice on the tree, which is our standard practice for extra notification to the community. Here's just a quick overview of where the property is on Monterey Boulevard. The tree is in the parkway behind the sidewalk in the frontage of the property. This is a kind of just a zoom in that shows the dimensions of the current layout. There's currently about a 5.5-foot wide sidewalk on Monterey Boulevard and about a 12.5-foot wide parkway that remains between the front property line and the back of sidewalk. And the tree is located, you can see that green area inside the 12.5-foot wide parkway location. Here's another view from the street level. You can see that the tree it's about 5 feet higher than the sidewalk level, and it is positioned about 8 to 10 feet behind the existing sidewalk. Here's some additional photos of the existing conditions. You can see that it's up on top of the retaining wall in the rear. It's actually, I think, a second tier of the retaining wall and close to the property line. The proposed condition would bring the current encroachment area up to conformance consistent with Hermosa Beach Municipal Code Section 1216-130 that does require any substantial redevelopment exceeding 400 square feet to remove non-conforming elements from the encroachment area. We are working with the applicant to provide an encroachment permit for this area once they vacate the non-conforming structures, which include the retaining walls and the staircase. The staircase is getting pulled back and rotated, I believe, 90 degrees and pulled completely on the property line, and all the retaining wall systems would be pulled back as well. The challenge is that the tree, being 5 foot higher than the ground elevation, is atop of that wall, so it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for the tree to remain while removing the non-conforming encroachments from that area. So in order to comply with the municipal code 1216-130, they are required to remove the tree as part of the project. However, they are proposing to replace the tree with a 2-to-1 ratio on site at a slightly more southern location. Those are shown on this image. They're proposing a Caro tree, which is within the approved list for parkway trees, 2 Caro trees. So for tonight, the recommendation is for commission to consider the approval of removing this 1 tree and accepting the installation of 2 trees per the approved parkway tree list within the encroachment area. And that concludes my presentation.
Does anybody have any questions for staff?
I do. I had asked a question with one of the engineers, with Jonathan, before the meeting about the distance from the sidewalk to the existing sidewalk to the property line. Is that not 14 feet, or maybe I got confused by that 12.5-foot number you had there?
Thank you, Commissioner Graith. And I believe that it was an estimate of 14 feet, and he did clarify when he put together the slides for this evening that it's 12.5 feet. So it's a little bit less than what we thought. But the tree is within that area.
So, but we're confident that the tree is in the public right-of-way and not on private property?
It's absolutely in the public right-of-way.
Okay.
It's between the property line and the back of sidewalk. I have 100% confidence it's in the public right-of-way and not on private property.
Okay, then I will defer to your 100% confidence because maybe I made a measuring mistake today. Yeah, I was just going to then, as part of my questioning, also disclose that as part of my ex parte disclosure that I did do a site walk today. I saw the condition there. I noticed that there are retaining walls, and they actually occur in sort of a tiered fashion on 2 levels. The upper retaining wall, in some sense, kind of surrounds a lot of the soil at about the level where the existing tree resides. It also looks like there's at least about 28 feet of frontage width on the property. And it looked, and so And then I took some measurements which don't agree with your measurements, but I will defer to your assertion that the tree is indeed in the public right-of-way. And also, I was just kind of curious, I drove around the back. It looks like most of the, if not all the residents on that street actually have their garages on the Loma side there. I'm assuming that that will continue to be the case for this redevelopment. Do you know?
I believe so.
In other words, there's no driveway going in the front, correct?
That's correct. It would remain an open area in the front, and they're proposing to have an encroachment area where they could have sort of a front yard in front of their property, but more at grade, but no driveways located on the Monterey side of the property.
Right.
Some properties do have driveway access on this side, but this one would not.
Right. And then the staff report does talk about infrastructure for the new design, and it highlights the drainage pipes, which you also highlighted in your presentation. And then there will be a new retaining wall of some sort as part of the design as well, or?
It would all be on private property, but
Oh,
nothing
okay.
proposed in the
Okay.
public right-of-way.
Okay. And then would other portions of the right-of-way also be used to accommodate things, other utilities, like a sewer lateral or anything like that?
So I don't know if I'm able to speak to all the elements within the public right-of-way. I know that there is, I believe, 2 drain lines that would cross the encroachment area from the property to help, I think, for the LID improvements and the pump unit that they have on site that would be for a curbside drain that does have to cross the encroachment area. I don't believe SOAR crosses this location, but I couldn't speak confidently about that.
Okay, but regardless of how removing the encroaches may free up some room for accommodations like that, the main point, I believe, is that for a major redevelopment like this, the code says that we need to remove any non-conforming elements in their right-of-way, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then another part of my disclosure is there is a part in the staff report that talks about what are permitted or examples, and it's generally, things like structures and stairways, the types of things you mentioned. I believe that's actually specified under permissible encroachments in the definition section, which is 12-16-10 of the municipal code, although it was not cited as such in the staff report. But I think that's important because, in a sense, the 12-16-10 then augments the primary part of the code that you cited in the staff report. So I just wanted to make everyone clear that 12-16-10 is part of the code that we may want to apply in our ruling tonight. And then finally, I see the staff report talks about that Monterey is designated as a priority sidewalk. I did go to Plan Hermosa, and I was able to locate the figure in there that sure enough has that there. And I assume that the designation as a priority sidewalk is our basis for wanting to expand the sidewalk from 4 feet to 5.5 feet. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes, that's correct. It would be expanded from 5.5 to 8 feet, actually, is the proposal. So current width is 5.5 feet. And our standard very minimum sidewalk dimensions typically 5 to 5.5. And so this would bring it up to a more priority width of 8 feet. So there are small expansion into the public encroachment area.
And by the way, you just accounted for my 1.5 feet that I couldn't get. The 5.5 versus 4 and the 12.5, and so we're all good on that one now. I know it's hard to follow, but anyway. And again, I think you answered one of my questions, but I'm going to ask it again because I think it's important. In your assessment, would it be difficult or perhaps nearly impossible, you may have said, to remove the existing non-conforming structures without removing the tree?
I think it'd be extremely hard to do so and not have a permanent structure remain or rebuilt at that location, just given the grade difference.
Thank you. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Can you just put up the drawing that showed where the 2 trees are going to go?
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so they are on either side of the walkway. Set back almost the same distance as the existing tree, perhaps a little bit further.
So I guess my question is there a reason to not put them closer to the street? Although I guess, can you tell me approximately what's the distance from the new tree to the house? My screen is terrible, so I can't see. There's a couple dimensions in there, but
Yeah, looking at it, it looks about 4 feet from the property line, about 3.5 to 4 feet from property line.
that's from the property line. My concern is because we see, some trees are planted in the public right of way, but they get too close to the houses and they interfere with gutters and stuff like that. So that would be is that position set? Was it set by Public Works? Was it set by the homeowner?
This was proposed by their design team, so
Okay.
we didn't make any requirement of where it was. This is their proposal for where those 2 trees would go.
Okay. All right. That's it. If there's no further questions, we move on to public comment. If there's anybody wishing to speak on this item, please speak now.
Hi, good evening. My name is Romaine Levy. I reside at 2415 Myrtle Avenue in Hermosa Beach, and I'm the homeowner at 2122 Monterey. My husband Tom is with me. Thank you to the Public Works Commission for your thorough report and for considering this issue. And thank you to Commissioner Britton for your motion to hear this item earlier in the evening. We appreciate that. I am here just to confirm everything that I heard in the report tracks with our experience. We did our best to comply with everything that Public Works had asked for us to do on that encroachment space and encouraged our designers to comply in any way they could. We're sad to see a beautiful, thriving tree be taken out, but happy to replace it with 2 new ones that will hopefully grow to be as large and healthy as that one is. So we're excited to move forward, and thank you all for considering this tonight.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions of us?
No.
Okay,
Anybody else?
thank you.
All right. That will close public comment. We'll bring it up here for deliberation.
Yeah, I'll get the deliberations going. First of all, I want to acknowledge that there is nothing, there was no evidence brought to us that says that the tree is either dead or causing a nuisance. The municipal code gives us a few different reasons why a tree may be removed. Those are a couple of the conditions which don't apply in this case. I will be recommending that we do approve the removal of the tree, however, and what I will cite is a reason in the code which has to do with possibly interfering with the use and enjoyment of the property by the property owner. it was, we were heard in the staff report that as a requirement for the development of the property, there's a part of the code that says that you need to remove these existing non-conforming structures. And that was why I was then pressing on whether it would be possible to leave the tree and still achieve that. And I'm hearing no, and that agrees with my layman's assessment today from having gone out and walked that site myself. So my logic is that if we can't remove the tree, or if we kept the tree, then we couldn't remove the encroachments. You couldn't satisfy the condition per the code that you need to be able to develop your property. If you couldn't develop your property, that would be severely interfering with your ability to enjoy the use and enjoyment of your property. So through that chain of reasoning, that's how I'm applying the evidence we've been given to the municipal code to recommend that we do remove the tree. There was also some talk in the staff report about the infrastructure, and maybe there'd be some inefficiencies with the layout of some of that infrastructure in association with the tree. Speaking for myself, I'm going based on the law as I articulated. I'm not taking that into consideration in my assessment, but it's not necessary to make the finding that I'm making. And then finally, I do appreciate that the plan is to replace both trees, the tree with the two per the code on site. So I'm good with the recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, this is less about this specific item, but how do we pick the trees? Does the homeowner pick the trees? Is there a grand city plan?
So we have an approved tree list that has certain zones, and there's trees within those zones that do better based on how close they are to the ocean. And I think that was the general basis of how it was developed. We typically work with the applicant on the selection. We don't have a defined list for what species to go. As long as it's on the list, then we do allow it. But we try to work with the homeowner, since they are ultimately responsible for the health of that tree, to select something that they would want for their property.
Does the city have any interest in trying to coordinate, on a certain street that you've got, some uniformity? Again, this is not something that's going to happen today, obviously, but just kind of for future, or just people pick what they pick, and if you've got weird trees next to each other, that's okay.
No, it's a great question and idea, and something staff has talked about whether we do develop more of a tree planting plan, because I agree there are certain streets that have trees, certain species that are more prevalent. You look to our downtown, we have palm trees, and then you go to other streets and there's other types. So it could be something that we look at in the future, whether we've talked about updating the parkway tree list. In general, is something on our to-do list in the future. I think it hasn't been updated in some time. And so possibly as we look at updating that list, we could also look at, is there more prescriptive ideas about what could go on certain roadways? But it would take a more holistic look, and it would be some effort to put together, but definitely something we've talked about.
Okay. If there are no further deliberations, does anybody have a motion?
Okay, I make a motion that we accept the staff's recommendation to approve the removal of the pine tree on the right-of-way fronting 2122 Monterey Boulevard, and accept the installation of 2 replacement trees as per approved parkway tree list, and as of the removal of the parkway tree lift requirement.
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion? Andrew, can we have a vote?
And I will call upon Commissioner Britton. So how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, voting is closed, and motion passes.
All right. Thank you very much for speaking at our meeting.
Okay, Chair Hayes, since our other commissioner has not arrived, can we move the pavement project up also at this time?
Yeah, I believe that was part of the previous motion.
Okay.
So as Andrew works to pull this up, our senior engineer, Hichul Kwan, that oversaw the preparation of this, is going to give a short presentation. I'm going to hand off the clicker to him.
Good evening, everyone, and commissioners. My name is Hichul Kwon, and I'm the senior engineer in Public Works Department. I would like to speak with you today about the city's pavement management programs. That is maintaining and improving our city roadways is essential for safety, mobility, and long-term cost saving. So tonight I will provide an overview of how we assess pavement condition and prioritize maintenance and rehabilitation and implement strategies for our communities. Sorry. So the California Street and Highway Code sections. Let me see. Sections shows agencies and municipalities shall develop and adopt a PMP, pavement management program for street and highway that receives funding. So in November 1990, Proposition C was approved by the LA County voters. Half cent sale tax means 0.5% of sales price has to go to the Proposition C. So LA Metro is the funding agency and require that pavement management system shall be updated and certified for Proposition C local fund triannually pursuant to the state code. The Public Works hired SOMAS and GMU pavement engineers to perform PMP study in 2024 and was completed and updated in January 2025. So the PMP scope, there are 5 main categories of PMP. So they are the street maintenance, city street network inventory, and current pavement surface condition assessment, and pavement condition index, so-called PCI analysis, and maintenance and rehabilitation strategy, and budget scenarios. So the city network consists of the arterial street about 6.8 miles, and collector street is about 10.3 miles, and local street about 30 miles, and alleyways of 0.5 miles. So total 47.6 miles, but that's excluding a PCH and then Walk Street. The PCH maintained and then owned by the Caltrans. So the consultant assessed the current street and pavement in October 2024. So the consultant performed the field observation in October 24. They visually observed all the street condition and such as cracks and any distress of those kind of the conditions. So there is a big important term is that the pavement condition index is PCI. The pavement condition is the measurement of pavement grade or condition and ranges from 100 to 0. The PCI value is analyzed by the factors of climate, traffic load and volumes, and paving materials, and age, and field observations. For example, a newly paved street will have PCI of 100, but however, the street is near the end of the service life will have a PCI of 25 or less. The table shows the 4 general condition categories. So the PCI values of kind of a wider range. It doesn't have it doesn't show that each number has good value of the category. So the PCI value for this study was analyzed by the paver management software developed by U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So there are many maintenance and rehabilitation strategies for these based on these ranges. So street maintenance and rehabilitation will be performed based on the PCI value and field observations. So for example, PCI 86 to 100 is good to excellent condition and may need minor crack sealing or ongoing monitoring. And PCI higher than 70 generally need slurry seal or chip seal maintenance strategies. And also the PCI between 50 to 69 designate fair condition, but may need grinding and overlay. Or we can use the crack sealing over PCI 60 along with the slurry seal to extend the service life. And PCI between 25 to 49 is considered poor condition and need a major street rehabilitation, including street grind overlay and localized remove and replacement. But the under PCI 25 is failed condition and need a full street reconstruction or major local removal and replacement based on the field observation and core testing. So we can apply for certain condition for cracks between 1/4 inch to 1.5 inch are applicable for crack sealings. And this is the sample of the inventory table. It shows street section and segments, their length, width of the street, and also the PCI values, and also the recommended the paving maintenance options like a slurry seal or slurry seal, local repair, such as this is the sample, and then the PCI value is it shows on this table. So based on the table, the Pier Avenue average is about 50 to 55. That is part of our upcoming street project. So that's why I choose our street is Pier Avenue is kind of bad condition and we choose for the overlay and grind and overlay for this time. But the Hermosa Avenue on north of the pier is relatively good conditions. As you can see, the PCI is about 70 to 85, an average. So this slide shows a sample street conditions. So the Edmore Avenue, that segment is about 95. As you can see, the picture is very nice without any major cracks. But the bottom avenue is Power Street is really bad condition for now, and that street is added in upcoming annual street project. So we are going to the grind and overlay with the local repair, like 6-inch deep remove and replacement. So that Power Street has only 14 PCI values. So we choose that the street has to be reconstructed locally. So based on that, the current overall citywide PCI is 68% for 2024 PMP study, but it was 70 before 2021 PMP study. So it's kind of, it is decreasing than 2021 study. And there is another term, so budget scenarios. So the estimated current city annual funding is $1.5 million. The funding source from the Measure M and Measure R, and the other one is that Prop C and Prop A. And then also the Senate Bill number 1 called SB 1 funding. And also there is a city general fund we can use for the street pavings. So, and then PMP study provides 4 budget scenarios as shown on table. So the current funding level is $1.5 million, and then we may need $15 million for next 10 years. However, the PCI value is 68 current, but it's gonna be decreased to 59 next 10 years. And then unlimited budget is highest cost option. So it is total for 10 years, $42.3 million we may need it. So first year, we need a $26 million. And the next 9 years, $1.8 million every year. And then that result, those PCI value is going to be increased to, excuse me, to 86. But that is very optimistic numbers and then funding levels. So I don't think we may not, I don't think we can make that funding level for now. Then the other option is maintain current PCI values at 68. So total 10 years, we may need a $31 million, average $3.1 million annually. So that case, we can maintain 68. So no changes of the PCI value. But if we do nothing, not investing any money, then the PCI value is dramatically dropped by 45. That means all failed street. So we don't want that condition. So we have to spend at least those $3 million per annual allocation. We need that. So to maintain the current PCI 68, the city may need to allocate $3.1 million, as I mentioned, annually over the next 10 years. Under this limited condition, the city would actively identify and secure the available funding along with the cost-effective maintenance and rehabilitation strategies. These strategies will include identification of local, remove and replace, and then AC grinding and overlay. Even if the PCI is under 25 within the pavement structure, the edge construction can still be applied with an overlay in other areas. This approach will increase the overall pavement structure section and extend the service life with saving construction cost. So it depends on the site observation and some kind of the lab testing, such as core testing. Even the PCI value on shown PMP, the engineers public works staff has to do some lab test and then field observation for the future future street improvement project. All right, thank you for your time. I have any question. I have some question from Commissioner Mr. Breton, so I can answer as much as possible. So if you have any questions, so we can ask about that.
Also, I think what we're going to do here is, I don't know if the recommendation is to, it's to receive the report and provide comments if so desired, right? So whatever we do would be like a receive and file or something like that, or just receive the report, I guess. So I envision perhaps mixing questions and comments. Would it be appropriate to go ahead and do public comment now, although there's no one in chambers? In other words, normally we'd ask questions, take public comment, deliberate. In my opinion, a combination of questions and comments simultaneously would be more effective for this, so I'm trying to facilitate being able to do that.
That's certainly within the the commission's discretion.
So I open it to public comment. Seeing no one, anybody online?
We have no speakers present online, Chairperson.
Okay, then I close public comment and open up for deliberation and discussion.
Thank you, Chair. Director San Clemente, would you like to say any overview words about the use of this plan? It looks like, there's the basis as a request for funding, obviously, seems to be an emphasis, and then maybe how it informs our specific plans that we might make.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Commissioner Grayson. So this, one thing to keep in mind is that the PMP, it's one input to making decisions on what we pave. So it helps tell relative conditions at one point in time when those observations were done. You may remember a few years ago when we were looking at paving Prospect Avenue, the older PMP showed better conditions, but with a lot of the inclement rain conditions we had rapid deterioration on that roadway. And so PMP changed quickly, or PCI changed quickly on those roads. So it's a snapshot in time. And it is a planning tool. We do try to look at corridors for getting paving done and to help make decisions that are also combined with field observations by staff, and then also when combined with planned utility projects like sewer repairs or replacement or upcoming water projects. So even if a project, a PCI on one roadway might be very low, we might need to delay it to accommodate underground utility work so we don't dig twice. So it is definitely an input for our decisions. I think just as a general overview, we are below our spending target to retain what we have. I think this year we're over the current target. So if the recommended's 3.1, we're actually just awarded, and Heat Shield did an amazing job on the design and getting this project out to bid 4 months ahead of schedule, given the rapid deterioration of our pavement. We knew we couldn't wait. And we're actually a little bit over. There's a $3.2 million award, so we're actually slightly over this year. But historically, we have not been at that $3 million mark. And so if we don't at least maintain that level, we are looking at a continued decline. Some things that we are doing from this, and we have new capabilities in the Public Works Department. We just bought crack sealing equipment. It was something that we didn't have before. And so our team is actively working on deploying crack sealing. They've done some work on Clark Field. They've also deployed on Bonnie Bray very recently to start using that. And we are going to be using this to help inform where crack sealing can occur with our crews in-house. We also do hundreds of pothole fillings a year. So as residents request them, identify them, or our staff identifies them, we are working actively to do large patches and pothole repair in addition to the capital improvement program. So there are a number of strategies that we do use, but really it is, I think one thing that we were happy is to have this completed. We get a lot of requests for paving because there is a lot of need in the city. This is now posted on the website, so residents are able to flip through and see where their street may fall against other priority streets in the city. But once again, it is a planning tool. We're trying to get to all the streets, but it will take time to do so. Happy to answer any questions.
Sure.
So, so if I live on Powers, I don't, but and I see my street looks like that, and I hear that they're doing Pier, and I'm on an index that's, and I'm making numbers up, but I'm on an index that's 25, and Pier is around 50. How do we? How do we come to that decision that it's more important to do Pier than, again, I picked Powers because you had it on the slide.
So we just prioritize that street. So it's arterial street first, and then collector, and local, and other street lights such as alleyways. So arterial street has a lot of traffic and then heavy traffic load on top of it. So most of the street and other cities prioritize for the arterial street first. That's why the local street has some bad conditions. We understand that thing. So as I said, arterial first, and then collector and the local streets. That's a normal.
So at what point, in the meantime, the local streets are getting worse and worse and worse. So at what point do they become a priority?
So the challenge is that there's a lot of priorities and we have to balance which ones we can do. We got limited funds. We have to really put the money where we get the most, I guess, bang for the buck for it. And one of the challenges with the arterial streets is that you're going to have a higher deterioration rate. So while it might be 50, it could quickly drop. Rain events, traffic events are on it. And there's also higher volume of foot traffic too. We have higher pedestrian volumes of the downtown. There are a lot of cracks across crosswalks. So we actively have to do patching and a lot of the pedestrian crossings on some of the arterial roadways. But to be honest, we're holding Pier Avenue together in a number of locations. It's a place where our crews have had to continually go do patches to make sure that it's safe for pedestrian travel, but really it needs to get improvement because it's deteriorating at a quicker rate than the residential streets that have less traffic on it. So it is a bit of a balance, and we try to add residential streets in with all the projects, but Prospect Avenue was completed, heavily trafficked roadway. We're working on Valley and Pier, also heavily trafficked roadways, but we've mixed in a number of high priority, low PCI residential streets like Power Street and several other segments that are in very high need.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and just for some context here, I've got some things laid out in kind of a logical, flowing fashion, and a lot of it has to do with the different scenarios and the funding. But Chair Hayes brings up some good points about how we make decisions, and some of the things I touch on are gonna also feed into that. And by the way, since it's a small group, I'm not offended if you want to piggyback off of anything, and you're the chair, of course. So a lot of my stuff is with the scenarios and the funding, but there are a couple specific things I'll ask that, since you brought them up. So one of my questions was, and I think you answered it, what was the motivation for the city to request recommendations for crack sealing? And so are these considered kind of a lower cost short-term fix? And you mentioned we have equipment for that, and staff can do it, right?
Yeah, so the crack sealing is, Director mentioned that it is cost-effective way. So the engineer choose PCI more than 60, we can apply the crack sealings, and then most of the other city or agency recommended about more than 70 PCI values for the crack sealing, but we can do the more than 60 is crack sealing along with the slurry seal on top of it. So it extend their service life for those streets.
So they're sometimes actually done in conjunction?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, but not necessarily?
Not really.
Okay. And then another question, and I think you touched on it when you were showing the color-coded, the categories of PCIs. What's the typical range where you would recommend a slurry seal PCI?
Slurry seal PCI value is so mostly the slurry seal PCI value recommended more than 70. So as I just mentioned, we can apply with the crack sealing and slurry over PCI 60. So we can make some stronger for over 60 PCI, and then we can hold to extend the service life. And in the meantime, we can go other street lower PCI for like grinding overlay strategies. So we can make holding that street with the crack seal and then slurry seal, and then jump back to the worst street.
Right, and in the report, it talks about there's a point where the slurry seal really isn't as effective, so there's kind of a lower bound. And then
Right.
there would be an upper bound, just because we wouldn't want to do it prematurely, because we have to be
Yeah.
efficient with our funds. And then Commissioner Hayes talked about some of the local streets that haven't got as much, and so there's, you're kind of, in my view, looks like you're trying to do a couple of things. You want to rehabilitate the really bad ones, but there's also, it's good to try to do some of the ones that are just getting down to that lower end of the slurry seal, because that's cost efficient.
Yes. So,
Could it possible to put up the chart that shows the aging, the PCI versus time, and you have the different degradations? Is that a slide in your package?
no, I don't have that slide.
Oh, okay, okay. So, but what it shows is that if you do, say, a slurry seal when you only get down around 70-ish, you know, and then you're doing those, you know, they're much cheaper, and in the long run, it's less expensive.
Yeah, but the slurry seal still, that street has existing cracks. So there is chance to have more cracks. I mean, widening the cracks, even if we did the crack seals. So the main goal is that we just hold for that worsening of the street for now, and then we can go other street first. I mean, that is cost effective way.
The reason I bring it up is I'm reinforcing the point that Joe's made in other presentations that always basically shows that if we can stay on top of things, it's much cheaper in the long run, and that's the point, right? So on one hand, we have some streets that are really bad, and we got to go take care of them because they're so bad. On the other hand, if we're not spending the money up front, that's a smart investment on the good streets, then in the long run, we're worse off. So there's kind of this tension, you know, between what's the cost-efficient priority versus what's the fixing, what's really bad priority.
Yeah, so the Public Works is now planning to do this slurry seal project for in near
Yeah.
future.
And then you have in the appendix, you just had, I think for the 1.5 million a year scenario, but you have these maps and they have different combinations of the orange and the yellow. So the yellow is global M&R. Does that refer to like slurry seal and crack? And then the orange, major M&R, is that like a mill and overlay or a major?
Yeah, that terms, yeah.
So that's kind of what it is?
Yeah.
And just to sort of get my terminology straight, so a lot of times when we say maintenance, we kind of mean like a slurry or a crack seal. But if we say rehabilitation, it tends to mean like a mill overlay or extensive restoration.
So rehabilitation, usually we use the term for the bad condition under like a PCI 50. So slurry seal or crack seal maybe over 60. So over 60 is like maintenance strategies, but lower 50 is rehabilitation, like grind and overlay, and then local removal and repair.
Okay.
So that.
Okay. So you've helped me with the terminology, and you helped me to understand these maps. And then if you look at these maps that are notional, what we would do for the next 10 years, you know, if you just scroll through, there is a combination of orange and yellow, which tells me that whoever thought this through was attempting to kind of do the balancing act I just described, which is to fix the really, really bad ones, but also put some investment up front to be cost efficient on the other ones.
Yes.
So that's what I think I'm seeing in these notions.
That is true, by the way.
Okay, very good, very good. So I like that you're at least recognizing the challenge and
Yes.
and seeing if it's possible to kind of have it both ways. And then another thing I will piggyback off, I think, off of Chair Hayes. I was looking, you have a table in the study that has a breakout of the different arterial, collector, local streets, and alleys, which is just a small number. And you showed some numbers. We've got about 55% roughly are the local streets.
Yes.
in the report, there's a breakout of the PCIs based on whether it's a local street or a major street. And while about half of the streets are local, a little more than half, roughly 2/3 are in poor or failed condition.
Yeah.
So you can see, in this anecdotally, we know that the major, you know, the Hermosa Avenues, the Prospects, the Valley Ardmores, the Pier Avenues are getting attention, and as Joe pointed out, they're heavily used. But the numbers also show that we need to try to find a way to show some love to the local streets as well.
Yes, sure. So,
And so I'm seeing that supported by the data that I just cited there. So I wanted to go ahead and highlight that as well. And also back to the point about, you know, what's cost effective. We've got these 4 scenarios cost-wise, and one is the so-called do-nothing scenario, which right, I mean, the infinite, whatever it's called, the money is no object scenario and the do-nothing are kind of the ends of the spectrum, and I think they help to illustrate the behavior of this, right? Obviously, we're going to be somewhere in between, but if you look at the numbers for that scenario, the do-nothing, and you even look at the numbers for the 1.5 million per year scenario, by 10 years, the numbers really fall off the cliff. Mm-hmm. And because what happens is you don't keep up, it just keeps getting bad, and you get this sort of snowball effect.
yes.
And so, so again, I'm saying this in public, you know, whoever's out there to help reinforce the point, and hopefully the decision makers will be getting that as a point as well. So I wanted to emphasize that. One of the scenarios, one of the intermediate scenarios, for example, was the spend enough to keep the PCI at the current value of 68, and that was roughly $3 million a year being spent. We showed we have some detailed appendices to this report, you know, that have all the tables
yes.
that go along with the maps that show what types of, notionally, what types of repairs we would make, and those are the basis of the cost estimate. I didn't see any such appendix for the scenario 3 maintaining at 68. Do we have the data and it's just not published?
We don't have that data, but we can ask the consultant. So,
Okay, so obviously it's up to you. You understand how this works. You are the ones that are going to eventually make the specific plans. Mm-hmm. I guess that brings me to sort of a question, or should we acknowledge that these aren't really the plans we're going to do? Isn't it more that these, 1, establish a basis for our cost estimates, and 2, provide notional plans to sort of illustrate the thought process we might go through?
yes. Yes.
Or are these specific? I mean, if we said we're going to have one, right, in the real world, we don't know for sure exactly what our funding is. And
Right. You know, Commissioner Gray, I'll jump in too. I think it's one input to the process. So I think they give a variety of scenarios so we get a sense of where we need to be, but ultimately we have to kind of weigh each location. We know we're going to give love to the residential streets, but there are a number of things coming. For example, there's more work coming with LA County Sanitation District. There's more Cal Water work coming. We have other planned sewer projects and storm drain projects that come in. And so we have to overlay that with this network and try to make a decision of how do we minimize the impact to the neighborhood, but get both efforts done and not have to come back twice. So there is a lot of juggling we're doing right now to try to coordinate those efforts, which, you know, by the time we get to certain neighborhoods, the PCI can change. And so that's why it's good that we're updating every 3 years. We're required to, but it's a point-in-time data set that we use to help inform that decision, which is also largely contingent on how much money we have every year.
okay, so just then I'm curious. Who did the contractor who wrote this report? Did they generate those completely independently, or did you do it together, or did you review it together?
Yes, we reviewed it together, and then they they created this report by their own knowledge and their information, and the city provided all the data, previous data for previous years, previous data for last 20 years. And also we provided the paving the street paved history for example, like Prospect Avenue, we provided the plans and details, and other street too, recently paved the last 10 years. So they combined all together. So all the data based on the year of the construction, and then the previous data. So we had the paper software file for last 15 years, I believe. So they used all together. So that's why they generated with this data based on our all information.
Okay, but I'd like to think that there's probably some similar thought processes that you would use in generating our real plans as what went into theirs, although as Joe said, there are a lot of other considerations like the way other things are in there. And it sounds like you're not really all that worse off just because they didn't generate a detailed plan for the 68 scenario.
No, I think we can't have an exact roadmap. I think it gives us good information to make decisions, but this is the ideal situation that there's no other conflicts and we can just pave, but we know that there's other conflicts that we have to work around, private development, utility connections, and things like that. So it really just, like I said, it's one part of the equation, but it gives us a lot of good information to work off of.
Right, and eventually you'll be the ones that'll do it instead of them.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And yeah, the funding has been kind of up and down over the last, especially in COVID. We didn't do much, so it sounds like even the 1.5 million is a little bit arbitrary. Probably the powerful message is that even 3 million is maybe the least we can get away with, and I'll leave it to you to ponder that further, and you be the one to carry the real message forward. This does conclude the Prospect project, right? I think that was what this goes through.
Yeah.
And the projects we've done in the last few years have those been mostly like a grind and overlay? I don't know if we've done any slurry seals. They've all been more substantial, right?
Yeah, we didn't do any slurry project the last 10 years.
Right.
Everything's all grind and overlay.
Right. And again, it doesn't really change the point, but I don't know if these budget levels include design money and construction management money, but whether they do and don't would also tell if there's some extra conservatism or not built into these numbers, whether it's an apples to apples or an apples to oranges. So I would just take that with a grain of salt. And I noticed that in the report they used the term, there's that one scenario, the unlimited funding, and it looks like what you do there is you all of a sudden have this cash infusion and you magically get yourself to about 85 or 86, which is the threshold of the good or good to excellent. And then you're kind of in slurry seal mode from there, right? So I was trying to figure out what the definition of backlog was. And I think I figured what they meant by backlog was that's the number that gets you instantaneously to 85, right? Is that correct?
85 is ideal number, but there is no any concrete guideline for what PCI the old city has to maintain it, because it varies.
Yeah, I guess I'm just quibbling that the report didn't define backlog, and I had to
No.
figure it out. And I saw also, I'll state, remind us for the record that the Plan Hermosa, for better or worse, does cite 81 as our goal.
Yeah.
So I just want to remind people of that. So there was not a Plan 81 scenario, but I understand these are kind of different points in the sand. to illustrate the point.
Yeah, for your information, I contacted MTA, what is the guideline for PCI value, but they said they don't have them. But the Orange County Transportation Department recommended 75 PCI value to get the funding from the OCTA. So 75 probably the guideline, but 81 is high, very high number to maintain it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if you had a simple parametric of that long-term PCI
Right.
versus the funding. But again, we're kind of connecting the dots between these cases that we have here, and I understand that. And when these guys actually do these scenarios, it sounds like they're in effect like simulations.
Yeah, it is simulator. simulation.
And I assume that they have some amount of built-in degradation that's modeled into the simulation then, is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, believe it or not, I'm pretty far through my comments. Yeah, I believe it or not, I think I got through all my stuff. Thanks for putting up with all that. We only do this every, 3 to 5 years, and I think the last time we did it was in 2017. I don't remember us doing it
Yeah, we
the
did
last time. So
yeah, we did a 2017, and then we did another one 21. Now is another 3 years term, so we did a 24 this study. So
Yeah.
next term is 27. We have to do another one.
yeah, so this is kind of a big deal, right? This is part of our back to basics approach. And that's why I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to go in here. I realize you are the professionals, we're the commissioners, but if I can understand it and help get some of your messages across and support you, I hope I'm able to do that. And it doesn't hurt to be a little educated, even if a little knowledge is dangerous. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
John?
Thank you for the comprehensive and thorough report. I really appreciate it.
You're
You
welcome.
did a
Thank
great
you.
job.
I just have a couple. How many miles of road are we doing this year?
This year is about 2 miles.
Okay, and last year?
I believe it was 1.6 for the Prospect Avenue project.
Okay, so there's 47.6 total miles in Hermosa Beach, if I read the report correct.
Yes.
And it said 5.5% are poor. So if there was nothing else to do, you could get rid of the poor, and they didn't grow, and more roads didn't become poor. You could take care of those in 2 years, theoretically.
Unless more roads fall into that category.
That's what
That's
I
the challenge.
had that caveat. I knew you were going to come back. I had that caveat.
But yes,
Okay, we hear people complain about the roads all the time. I see, I look, everybody does the same thing, and they look at their area, and, I live on a corner, and I think they've got the colors backwards, because I think the one that's yellow should be green. I think the one that's green should be yellow, but, and everybody probably sees their roads as being worse than everywhere else. So, like I said, I would like to see, and again, I would like to see us try to get as many of the poor roads taken care of as possible. I know some of them are tiny little roads that might only have a couple of houses on them, but I think that would be a priority to me. Do we have a similar report like this for sidewalks?
there was a detailed sidewalk condition inventory that was done in 2017, I believe, and we also did curb ramps as well. And that is something that we do work off of. They looked at conditions, and then they also looked at ADA compliance as well. But those conditions have changed since the original report was done, but we do refer to it and then supplement with additional investigations when we go out. And where possible, when we're out doing paving, we try to pair it with the associated sidewalk repairs that have to happen, or we do a separate sidewalk project.
Okay. And then finally, how is this going to be presented to council?
Thank you. So we are planning to provide some details about this as part of the CIP study session. We're currently working towards the new budget cycle, and we're working through what funding we have and what the priorities are coming up, but we do plan on highlighting some of these scenarios and the need. I think we are looking at funding, assuming that there is enough funding available to try to come up with a slurry seal project and a paving project. We want to try to do both this coming year, but there will be limited funds, and so there will be some decisions that City Council will need to make on what the priorities are. I will say I believe it's going to be difficult to reach the 3.1 million mark.
No, my concern is more that I see this report going into the consent calendar, and then nobody looking at it, and then a year from now when you're picking the new roads that are going to be paved, people are like, well, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know, you know. So is there a way to get this more in the face of council? Maybe if a certain citizen requested to pull it off of consent at the next meeting, or?
Sure, so we won't, right, the meeting minutes will go to City Council. We're not bringing this item to City Council for consideration. If someone wanted to make a question at the next City Council meeting, it would be on the meeting minutes, but it will not be an item on an itemized agenda.
Okay. Like I said,
Agendized item, rather.
we'll talk more about my frustration with council when we get into the CIP report, but I just want to make sure that council is paying attention, because sometimes they don't. So is any more questions, comments? All right, do we need a motion, or? All right, then let's go back to item 7B, activity reports. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you, H.L.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, I'll highlight a couple brief things in the January, February activity reports. So a few things that the team has been actively working on as a preparation for the annual landscape and lighting district assessment. It's an annualized item that we have to bring to council every year for approval, and so January is about the time we begin working on that, and so there is work on that. We have made significant progress in the Greenwich Village utility undergrounding district. This is on Hermosa Avenue, north of 26th Street. The team is actually getting very close to advertising the project. We're probably a couple weeks away from advertising, so we're almost there. But that has been a big push and a long time coming. Our team was also very busy with major utility projects, so ongoing work with Cal Water, and then also the LA County Sanitation District that also piggybacked over Bayview Drive. So a fair amount of coordination. We're glad that the Sanitation District project was a success and is complete. We're also working with them on additional projects that they have coming, likely this calendar year. There are two more phases. I believe they came to last meeting to highlight some of the work that's coming on Monterey near Hondo, and there's also the continuation lining work that would go beyond the limits of what they did on Bayview Drive, but basically within the city limits. So more information and schedule information to come, but we continue to work in coordination with them on those efforts. Our operations and maintenance team has also been busy, just typical spring work, getting the fields ready. A lot of work to get Clark Field ready for Little League and softball season. They rebuilt one of the dugouts, fair amount of field maintenance, fence maintenance to get that looking good and ready for the season, amongst a number of other activities. Recruitment has been an ongoing effort in the department as well. We are working to fill a vacant management analyst position. This is our only analyst in the whole department. This has been vacant for several months. It has been an ongoing recruitment. We believe we're nearing the end of that recruitment phase, but we do also have a city engineer position that has remained open for several months, and that recruitment is open. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on the activity reports, but those are the highlights for a few things that I wanted to point out.
Any questions?
None on the activity report.
All right, I guess we're moving on to the CIP status report.
Okay. All right, we're going to load up some slides. I thank you, Chair Hayes. We have a number of updates tonight. It has been a very active couple months since our last commission meeting. So I'm going to start off tonight with a quick chart. Kind of gives a snapshot of where we are as we're approaching the next budget cycle. But we have 6 projects complete, and we're on track for completing potentially 13 by the end of the fiscal year. There are a number of constructions that are entering the construction, or either concluding construction, or now entering, or actively in construction, or entering the construction phase. So there's 12 projects in that category. So we're juggling a number of construction projects right now. There's that wave of construction that we said was coming, and we're doing our best to coordinate these projects and minimize impacts throughout the city the best that we can. But there is a lot of work coming, and these are high priority projects that need to advance, like paving, and store work, and a number of other necessary improvement projects. There are a handful that are in the conceptual preliminary design that will advance further into final design phase, but there are a number in those early stages, and we have about 3 that are in that project approval bidding phase that will be entering into the construction phase. But right now, a lot of focus on advancing projects through construction. I'd like to give an update on some things that we are wrapping up. Our Greenbelt project, which is really 3 CIPs in one. We were substantially complete February 12th, so that's when we opened up the northern half. We opened up the southern half from 8th Street to 11th, right after Thanksgiving into December, and then we opened up the northern half of the pathway just in February. There is still ongoing work, so while it is all open and for use, we do have a number of punch list items that are being completed. We have some additional grading work that's going to happen on 11th Street, and we are going to be bringing back the contractor for some additional hydro seeding. We had a lot of rain. Some of the hydro seeding got washed away, so we are going to have them come back. It's been difficult to schedule it with the weather conditions, but they will be coming in the coming weeks. So there is a little bit more work to do, but it is largely open for the public's use and enjoyment. Highlight some of the things that we have beyond the DG path that's out there. New gym equipment on the northern side. There are numerous new trees. We did plant some larger box-sized trees out there at several locations. We did enhanced landscaping around the 9/11 Memorial. The photo on the left is the new accessible ramp that connects 11th Street up to Ardmore. That's one location where there is some additional grading that's going to happen. It's a little bit small in the picture, but you'll see one of the new trash cans that we've deployed. That purchase was made. We're deploying trash cans unrelated to this project throughout the downtown and in parks, but we wanted to make sure that we did a switch on this location as well. So you'll see the new trash cans and the pad that went with them. There is a number of sidewalk segments and curb ramps that we brought up to current standards and rebuilt. On the right-hand side is the Valley Drive side of 11th Street, where we have a new enhanced connection to the parking lot. So once again, this is not just a DG path. There were a number of other elements that we included to bring this whole section up to standard and bring some other enhancements. Moving down towards in front of the Clark building, one of those additional enhancements was the adding a rectangular rapid flashing beacon at the crosswalk. for enhanced traffic control at that location between the Greenbelt and the ADA parking. We installed 2 new concrete pads to update the ADA parking along the parking on Valley Drive. And then in the middle is the second set of gym equipment that was added. This is down at the southern end near 8th Street. A significant amount of new plantings went in. The picture on the left is down near 8th Street and Valley. In the middle, you can see all the new sidewalk that was added across 8th Street, some new grass, and then there is going to be 2 new bench locations. The one on the right, you can see the concrete pad actually extends a little bit beyond the bench, and that's for wheelchair accessibility adjacent to the bench. And actually, we are working with the, there is a naming committee that was designated by City Council, and so we will be bringing something forward soon for that, and ultimately a ribbon cutting in the coming months. We're waiting for more of the plants to establish, but that is hopefully to be scheduled in the next couple months. Moving on to our storm drain project, Bard Street. This project was definitely completed ahead of schedule. I think, had anticipated up to a couple months to complete this work. They did most of the major construction in about 2 to 3 weeks. So this is at the intersection of Bard and Oak Street to really capture a lot of that water that was coming off from Oak Street and just pouring into the residential neighborhood at the mobile home park to the north of it. So you can see the new storm drain line that was added in, new large catch basin to collect the water, and there was a new access hole that was also installed. We did go out and inspect, and all reports seem to be that it was fairly successful in catching the storm water. So we do think it was a success. Mm-hmm. And we are just one of the last remaining elements to come back and schedule the striping work, which has been delayed just given the weather. But once the striping is in, the project will be complete. And thank you to Heat Chill for helping advance that project as well as our other team members. Clark Building, we are roughly at about 70% complete. I have a handful of photos to show some of the great work that they're doing there. We are continuing to advance. In the left-hand side are the new heat pump systems, our AC units, and some of the decorative fencing that will go around it. This is on the west side between the baseball field and the back of the building. The crews are actively installing all the hand railing systems all around the periphery of the building. The picture on the right is between the Clark Building and the lawn bowling facility, where there will now be an accessible ramp not only to the Clark Building but to the lawn bowling facility. So we actually are updating access to that adjacent facility as well through this construction. And then as you move inside the building, in the middle, we've been doing a lot of the mechanical systems in the roof of the facility. There were some challenges as they got into the attic as they were routing some of the mechanicals, but we're able to work things out in the field and with the contractor, and that continues to move forward. The photo on the left shows the kitchen with some of the drywall going up, and they're working on some of the layout. All the rough plumbing is complete. And then the picture on the right is inside the ballroom, where they're also working on some of the drywall installation as well. Moving on to utility box wrappings. This is a project that has been ongoing for some time in partnership with Indivisible Arts, where they've been helping bring in local artists for each location. There are a number of hand-painted locations, and then we have actually started work on some of the wrapping through our public works crews. We have a print shop, and we're now able to print the wraps, and we've been working with artists to prepare the art and make measurements so that we can print the large stickers basically that go on. It takes a lot of skill. Our talented Rudy Molina, who is doing the wrapping, has really gotten amazing at doing some of these, and he's actually working on one of them on Pier Avenue now. But to show you a handful of the ones that we've worked on, I don't think I've given an update on this in a while, but This one is at Valley Park. This is hand painted. This was done in October. We have the next box. This is the first of the wrappings that we've done with our crews, with the art that was provided through Indivisible Arts. If you can go up there now, they're actually working on wrapping the back side of it, which will be the next installation. This is 2 boxes, but there's another one that's going to face the traffic side that's being installed. It was actively being installed today. And then moving
Are you
over-
also considering wrapping of the Public Works cherry picker as one of our art projects?
Maybe in the future. They are actually wrapping vehicles. We are doing the decals now. There's a number of needs when we get new police vehicles. Not to get too far off the subject, we are doing some of the wrapping that is required on the vehicles, but it is one of the new capabilities our talented team has. One of the other boxes that we worked on was in front of Valley School and Valley Drive. This actually did require, this was in very poor condition. Our crews coordinated the removal and installation of a new box. We had to coordinate with SCE and the school. We actually had to do an outage in order to install this because the signal was tied to this, so we had to coordinate that work. They put in a new box, and the artist recently completed the installation. There's actually a dolphin to match the, I guess, logo for the school. They have a dolphin shown. I think it's possibly their mascot for the school, so check that one out. It looks pretty good. And I think there's a couple that are still in progress. These are hand-painted ones. This one's on Hermosa Avenue, and we have another location on Gould Street that's actively in progress but nearly complete as well. This is as you come down the hill from PCH on the north side of the roadway, tucked in the trees. And so that's our utility box wrapping project, and we have a number of other art installations in progress and more to roll out in the coming months. Moving on to annual sewer improvement project, we are currently about 30% complete on the project. They are actively wrapping things up off of Prospect Avenue, and we are going to be moving into one of the next phases. I have kind of color coordinated here. I apologize if it's small, but there is several locations that are complete. We have some partially completed locations, and then we're actively working to schedule additional work. And so as we're moving from area to area, we are reaching out to neighborhoods and businesses as we move into the area. And so the next phase is Ardmore between 7th and 8th Street. And they will be starting there on Monday. It's expected to take about 2 to 3 weeks. This is a complete replacement of that sewer line. And we are working to expedite this to get off of Ardmore before any of the Pier Avenue paving work begins. So we're trying to make sure that we're not on Valley Drive at the same time. So we're working on getting Ardmore completed. This will require a full road closure between 7th and 8th Street on Ardmore. There will be turn restrictions at 7th and 8th Street on Ardmore, only during work hours. They will plate it, so during the evening, we'll restore access, and there'll be access on the weekends. So we're actively working to issue notifications to the impacted residents and through other e-notifications and just getting the word out tonight as well. So that's coming soon. And then our paving project. So we awarded the contract on February 25th. It is a very large project, $3.2 million contract award. Some of the big pieces being Pier Avenue, Lot A, Valley Drive, but there are a number of other high-priority residential streets like Power Street and several others that are really in that critical condition that really need paving. There is also some sidewalk repairs and curb ramp improvements as well. But what I would like to emphasize is that we are working to minimize the impacts the best that we can. Excuse me. We actually met with the contractor today. Excuse me, I'm gonna have some water. Thank you. So we have issued initial construction notices to all the residents and businesses along the Pier Avenue and Lot A corridors. We were originally looking at a potential 4 to 6 week timeline to complete those major paving efforts. We do believe that we can significantly condense the durations for those locations. We actually met with a contractor today, and we're working on finalizing what the schedule is going to look like. Right now, there's a tentative start date on Pier Avenue. And so we are sequencing this work to minimize overall parking impacts and impacts to the downtown. So they are required to do Pier Avenue first, and then they are required to move into Lot A second before they proceed with the other road segments in the overall contract. They are looking at a potential start of April 7th, but that week is really mobilization. We don't believe that there would actually be active construction work on Pier Avenue likely until the following week. And this is the tentative schedule right now, where they would start with concrete repair work. There's, I believe, one curb ramp that needs to be rebuilt, and there are several locations where we have bricks in the parkway that need to be reset and some other minor concrete work. We're looking at about 1 week for that concrete work on Pier Avenue, but minimal impact to parking and traffic flow during the concrete work. And then we're targeting a start of the actual grinding and overlay work the following week, the week of the 21st. Right now, our understanding is that they can do the grinding in about 2 days and the paving in about 2 additional days. We are going to split the work into certain areas on it, and we would maintain two-way traffic throughout. So it will be two-way flow retained for the duration of construction on Pier Avenue, but there will be impacts during that time when we are doing the grinding. Of course, when we're done grinding, you can drive or park over those locations. And then when we pave, there will be longer durations where we can't go on that, but we are going to try to work with the businesses to maintain access the best that we can and try to get out of there as quickly as we can. So we are looking at about a 1 week duration for the larger impact, but once again, no work in the evening. This is only during work hours, and you will be able to drive through there during. And so we will continue to provide additional phasing and schedule information. These are rough tentative dates and ranges right now. We have set up a dedicated website, hermosabeach.gov/paving, where we will be providing additional schedule and phasing information as we know. But that's a really rough overall right now, and we will also be issuing construction notices to the adjacent residents and businesses within 300 feet of the corridor. And we are also working directly with the businesses that have dining decks. There are 4 on-street dining decks. There's actually 5 businesses that share 4 dining decks. We have made initial contact with them. They will be required to remove the dining decks and store them on private property during this work. That is their responsibility as part of the encroachment permit agreement for the dining decks, so that we can do the work in the public right of way, and then they're allowed to rebuild. We are actively working with them to see if they are interested in doing a more temporary sidewalk dining that we would work to permit with them at no cost to the businesses in an effort to help them out. So far, we've had one business that's come forward that's expressed interest in possibly doing sidewalk dining, and we're working through that permitting effort with them because we do want to minimize how long they need to take these down. And so we are trying to allow them to have the dining out as long as they can, and we don't want them to have to take it out until they really need to, but we were going to continue to coordinate with them. So every step of the way that we have information, we're going to continue to provide information either at these meetings through City Council or direct communication with folks along Pier Avenue. Lot A is looking like it will take about a week to grind and overlay, but once again, we will work directly with those businesses that rely on those once we have more defined schedule and phasing information. Once again, this is tentative, but as we get the information, we want to share it. And so those are the first 2 pieces, and then with subsequent sections of paving, whether it be Valley Drive or other residential streets, we'll also provide additional information as we know.
Can I just comment on real quick? Joe, I appreciate you're doing everything you can to minimize the impacts to the area and the businesses. I hope the public also realizes that this is not an everyday occurrence, and we appreciate your patience and understand that this is a good thing and may take a little everybody pitching in.
Thank you. On February 25th, at the City Council meeting that evening, we also awarded a contract for the South Park Slope and Irrigation Repair Project. This would really enhance the irrigation and all the landscaping on the northerly portion of the park. So this is north of the main field with an emphasis on the slope, where we'll be replacing all the irrigation. There's currently drip lines. These will be more embedded systems that will be much more durable on that slope versus the surface-mounted drip irrigation that was being pulled out and kind of tugged on by some of the kids in the park. This park is heavily used and hasn't had a refresh in some time, and so it is really just due for updating of all the plantings in there. We will not be impacting or making changes to the actual playground area, so there's no work in the actual playgrounds, play structures. We'll be doing all the landscaping work and irrigation around them. So the community garden and I believe most of the play structures will remain open. I think there may be one play structure that will have to be closed during the work, but we're trying to retain public access to most of the play areas the best that we can. We'll have additional information as we get a little bit closer. We just awarded the contract and we are haven't had the pre-construction meeting yet, but the goal is to retain as much access to the amenities like the garden, the play structures, and the restroom through the duration of construction. We would be replacing the grass near the restroom with more drought-tolerant plants to reduce water usage. The grass is really a placeholder at that location. There is grass that is going to remain, especially in the hills near the play structures. They're good places to sit and watch the park. But this is a complete refresh of this area and largely being paid by outside funding sources. We have a grant through LA County, and then we are also receiving a reimbursement through West Basin through their turf removal program. Covers a significant portion of the cost of construction for this project. So we're tentatively scheduled to start sometime in April. I don't have an exact start date, but more information to follow. Our pier structural inspection work through last fall through December, we completed a very detailed above and below water inspection. This included the divers that went out to look underwater and very close visual inspection. We used a boom lift to get underneath so that they could really investigate the underside of the pier, very close inspection. We've been working with our structural engineering team, consulting team that's out there that are experts in pier structures, and we are performing additional testing to supplement the visual work that was done. They have a ambient vibration testing that we are doing. We had conducted one smaller test on one individual panel earlier this year, a few months ago, and now we're expanding that to several locations so that we can really get a closer look at several of the concrete panels on the deck to compare that testing with the visual inspection. The hope is that through this inspection or testing work that we could potentially reduce the amount of recommended repairs based on the visual inspection, because visual really accounts for where we can see cracking or other structural defects. And so through using this more ambient vibration testing, we can get a sense of how the individual concrete panels of concern are performing to determine whether or not there's anything that we couldn't visually see that was undetected, but more importantly, are there some panels that may not need replacement because they're actually performing better than they are appearing through the inspection. So that's the hope. This work began last night. We're doing it. It does require setting up these little sensors throughout the pier, so we kind of really need to do it when it's not active or having any vehicles driving over, like the trash trucks that go over it. So we're doing it when it's closed. We're starting at 10 o'clock, going to 6 in the morning. It takes about 3 nights to do all this work. So crews are out there. They will be out there again tonight. They're using headlamps. So if you see lights out on the pier, that's what's going on. But they're doing it behind the locked gates, so the pier will remain closed while they do that work. And then ultimately, as they get the results, we'll be working with them to reevaluate the recommendations and ultimately bring forward immediate recommendations. And then we're also having the consultant prepare a bit of a longer-term outlook and a cost-benefit assessment as we look at what repairs we're going to need, not only in the immediate term, but over the next 5, 10, 15-year period. Because as the structure ages, we are going to be looking at more frequent, more costly repairs. This is a marine structure, and so it will be a continual effort. So more to come, and we will absolutely be making recommendations in the upcoming budget cycle for more immediate repairs, but we're waiting to get more information before we can do that. So stay tuned.
I'm kind of curious, can I ask a technical question? So are you applying a vibration stimulus to this and then you're measuring the response, or?
No, the structures naturally have some movement in them. And so these can measure very fine movements in the structure. And we know how the structure was designed and how it should perform. And so they're able to model how it's actually performing and then compare it to how it should be performing to see if there's any excess movements beyond what should have been anticipated or would have been thought would be the case. And when we did one test panel, we were able to see some discrepancies in how the anticipated behavior would be, and also correlate those with the visual inspections. So there is a pretty high correlation with where we have visual inspections. I mean, cracking is normal in concrete. All concrete has small cracks, and so as they get bigger, we get more concerned about them, and not all of them are of concern, but we're able to really kind of correlate what we saw visually, and the hope is that if we do see things where we thought there was cracking, where a larger repair might be needed, could we potentially not have to do a complete replacement of a panel because it's actually performing better than we think it might be. So that's kind of the theory right now, what we're working on, and a lot of results to go through in the coming weeks.
Thanks.
Yep. CIP 619, February 25th was a busy night. This was the third contract award that was for consideration at City Council at that meeting. Ultimately, City Council did reject all bids that evening, and they have directed staff to go to the Parks and Recreation Commission and then subsequently the Public Works Commission for further consideration. The discussion that evening was concern about how many pickleball courts were active and to get further community feedback on that. So just a quick overview, the project was going to do a complete renovation of all courts. So this is a resurfacing, replacing the mesh on all the fencing. And really the biggest piece of this was bringing all the courts up to current dimensional standards, which is one of the main drivers of why 2 of the 4 existing pickleball courts were closed. 2 remain closed, and so this plan was to bring it up to dimensional standards to restore what was there. And there was a fair amount of discussion about whether there should be 2 or 4 pickleball courts at that location. So staff is working to get that on the Parks and Recreation Commission agenda, potentially as soon as next month, but to be determined. And then we would bring it to this commission afterwards before bringing it to City Council for further consideration on how to proceed. And I have a couple more quick updates. Parking lot C, we're actively advancing that as well. There are really 2 different distinct pieces in how this is moving forward. We had pulled out the elevator work separately because It is a unique trade, and there were long lead times on some of the elevator components. We had to work on abatement of the elevator shaft itself, and so all the abatement work is now completed. They've installed new drywall on the inside of the elevator core, and this was all in preparation for the elevator contractor to come in. So there are multiple contractors we've been working with, but the next piece is for the elevator contractor to come in and work on the full refurbishment of that elevator now that all the abatement work is complete. That work is still getting scheduled. It's still likely a couple of months out, probably targeting somewhere around June, July, TBD when all the parts come in. And then in the meantime, we've worked on advancing the high priority structural repairs within the facility, which that was advertised, and we did receive a number of bids and we're reviewing them. So it's still under review, and we're targeting a potential award for consideration at City Council in May, and then a potential construction start likely in the fall. So far, the bid ranges are, what I can say is they look within range for the CIP. They came within budget, but there's still more evaluation that we need to do before we can announce anything. So more to follow in May with that.
So when were the bids due?
They were due in January or February, I believe.
So in May, will they even still be valid?
It was February, and they are valid for 90 days. So we're either going to bring it to council at the end of April or in the first meeting of May, which is right at the 90-day threshold. I think it might have been February that they were due, but there is a 90-day period that we have to bring it forward.
Okay, it just, I know that prices are, for various things are going up right now, and if I was a contractor, I'd rather you award things sooner than later. So if...
No, agreed. We have 90 days. That is what's stated in the bid document, so we have that ability to bring it forward. But there is a fair amount of review for this one that is requiring some time to go through it.
Okay, thank you.
And then another update on Hermosa Avenue Green Streets. This project that we're doing in coordination with some of our adjacent cities. City of Torrance had advertised this project. This is a multi-city effort to help bring the city up to help work towards some stormwater compliance requirements. This would be permeable gutters along a portion of Hermosa Avenue and a couple of the adjacent streets. It was advertised. They received bids, I believe, last month. They did come in as an overall under the engineer's estimate for the overall project. However, the bid items for the elements within Hermosa Beach did come in higher. So we are looking at a potential additional contribution that the city would have to make for our portion of the work. The city did enter into an MOU with Torrance, and so we are looking at potentially bringing an item to City Council next month for consideration of adding additional funds to advance the project. Staff is still going through the details of the bid and the requirements of the MOU, so that's probably as much detail as I can share at this point, but we will be bringing an item likely next month so that City of Torrance can then award a contract the following month and hopefully advance the project.
Question, so is the watershed group basically asking us to reconsider our share in light of the more Hermosa site-related costs?
So the MOU outlines how the cost-sharing arrangement would work, and we are still reviewing it, but it does appear that if there are if our component or our scope of work comes in higher, then we do have some requirement to put in additional funding for it. So we are reviewing those requirements in more detail, which we can share more when we bring it to City Council.
All right, and I know if you're talking to them, you may not want to say a whole lot, but nominally, a lot of these projects have this percentage that's derived from the amount of runoff that's in your area and things like that. But I could also see how a given project may have certain accoutrements that, enhance the area in other ways. So, maybe there's more to it than I understand. And I know there are various cost-sharing formulas involved in all this. So we'll look forward to what happens with the council staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. And with that, that concludes all my updates. I'm happy to answer questions, anything I showed or anything we didn't cover.
I've got two. You covered my other two already. I'll just make a general comment. Sometimes when we have things that may be kind of visible around town, it's good to roll them out sooner than later so we don't get too far into a project and get a surprise. So this Project 111 on page 1, it's the gateway and wayfinding signs conceptual design. And the scope of this CIP as currently defined is just for the preliminary design, and we're about partway through. So this seemed like this would be something maybe before we go into final design, that might be a good time to roll that out and give the public and some of our decision makers some insight as to what it looks like.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Grithen. Absolutely. So this is the gateway and wayfinding sign. This is looking at gateway signs at the kind of periphery of the city, downtown wayfinding, and also a potential reintroduction of a marquee sign in front of the community center. This is the CIP right now is only funded for conceptual design. So there's no final design in the funding for this project. We had initiated the effort with a consultant, but with other project priorities that had to advance, the timeline had to move out on this, and then ultimately our contract lapsed with that consultant that was doing that work. So we had entered a new agreement, and now we are working on negotiating a new task order to complete that effort, but that's still ongoing before we can resume it. But the full intent is to come up with some potential recommendations and concept designs, and we would then bring it to the community for input. Likely, at this time, it could either be through commission and council or through other community meeting, but I totally agree. This is something that we would really want community input on, so we can get a sense of what the signs look like, what do they say, where do they go, how many signs do we want, so that we can better scope the effort and really figure out then what it would ultimately take to design and then install these, should we decide to move forward with the second part of the project to move into final design and installation. Because there will be some costs that go with it, and so there will be decisions to be made.
Sounds great. And then I got one more on the corporate yard or city yard, 615. Looks like there's going to be an RFQ, which I assume is a request for quotes for owners administrator services. So could you provide a brief description of what is an OA or owner's advisor and the associated services this person or group would do?
Sure. So right now, the tentative schedule that we had presented to council last year showed us working on some of the initial procurement pieces around this time. So we're fairly on track with what we had projected last year. Council had expressed fairly strong desire to go towards a design, build, delivery model for the city yard. And one of the challenges with design build is if we don't have financing in place, we have to look at a slightly different delivery model. We do not have full construction funding available for the city yard. We have a portion of those costs. And so we are looking at what we call a progressive design build finance model that would allow us to work towards advancing the design. We have the benefit of the contractor being on that design team to help inform what the cost and constructability nature of that would be, but would allow us a potential stopping point should we not be able to secure financing once we get to final design or have a full plan on how to move it ahead. But it would at least help advance the project and help us further identify what the costs are. It's typical in design build to bring in an owner's advisor service. This is going to be an intense design effort should we go design build, and so we are recommending to bring in an OA, owner's advisor, someone who's going to be experienced in a progressive design build process, because we're going to really need to work closely with this team on doing the design, making a lot of contract decisions. Well, ultimately, the first effort would be bringing someone in who has extensive experience doing progressive design build that can then help us prepare the next solicitation. So the first one's an RFQ, request for qualifications, to bring in the OA that would then help us prepare the solicitation for design build, and then help us in the contractor team selection in that process, but then help us manage that process and help us make the tough decisions as a partner to the city. Really extension of staff that's experienced in that process that can really help us move through it, because it will be intense and there'll be a lot of decisions that we need to make if we go this route. I think when we get to study session, we'll probably present a little bit more about the planned path that we do, and we're hoping to potentially release that first RFQ in the next month or so.
Thanks, Joe. And we've heard about design build. This design build finance sounds like another sort of flavor of that. And I don't know if inherent in this or not, one can only hope that perhaps there's an opportunity for a little bit of a design to cost mentality in the whole process, but we'll see. Thank you.
Dan? I have a couple. How, the Greenbelt project, how did we do on budget and schedule on that?
So schedule, I'll start with that. I'd say we tracked fairly well against what we had projected. And you could argue that some of it was open ahead of schedule because we finished the DG and I think it was the Thanksgiving break, and we were able to open up a portion well ahead of schedule. The second half, we didn't open until February, but it fairly tracked pretty close to what we had predicted last year. In terms of budget, we are way under budget, largely, one, because it came in less than what we had budgeted in the CIP, but we received $529,000 from the county through their reimbursement process. So that helped cover a significant portion of the cost of the project. So overall, we're looking at returning those funds that were secured for that project in the upcoming budget year. We'll be able to release some funding that was dedicated for the Greenbelt project. So
that answers my question, but it wasn't really what I was going
Okay.
for. So what was the original budget for the project, approximately? It's on a piece of paper I've got somewhere, I'm sure. But regardless, I'm trying to understand, where did the budget come in regardless of where the sources of funding came in? You know what I mean? Did we say we were going to spend $500,000 and we spent $550,000, or did we say we were going to spend $500,000 and spend $450,000?
I guess when you say what we said we would spend, are you referring to the approved CIP last year before the project got into construction? I'm just looking up the what we had in the FY24 budget. So we're well below. So there were 3 different projects. So CIP 502 had about $800,000 in it, but there was also the ADA and the striping project that increased that budget amount. I think combined all 3 were over $1 million. And then the construction award amount was less than that.
Okay.
And then on top of that, we received the $529,000 that brought down the total amount that we have to pay out of pocket even lower. So I think overall we are under what we said, well under what we said that we would need last year with the ability to return funds.
Okay. And how are we tracking on the Clark Building budget and schedule?
So right now with schedule, we are fairly on track with what we said. April has been the current target date. There have been change orders. This is an old building that have moved the timeline out. Originally, we had a target contract completion date of April 9. We now have moved it through necessary change orders, a couple additional weeks through that. We're looking at a completion date of the end of the third week of April. That's still subject to any additional work that we have to have or any potential delays that we might receive. For example, we are coordinating with Southern California Edison. We have to energize the power for that building, and so there is some backlog in getting Edison out. We have heard as much as 45 days, and so we're actively working to push them to come out so that we don't have any delays with Edison. But there is potential for additional delays, but right now we're tracking for the end of April for completion, not to say that there won't be additional punch list items that would go following into May. So overall, I think we're pretty much tracking on time with what we had predicted, but there is potential for some additional delay, but right now things look pretty good. The budget itself, we're within the council-approved budget and within the spending contingency that we approved. So we're not going to go over, and there's actually excess funds in the overall CIP that could potentially be released because the contract award with the contingency was less than the approved CIP amount. I can't tell you what that amount is right now off the top of my head, but I know that there is some excess funds that we can release because we wanted to make sure there was enough funding in there when we advertised it or re-advertised it. And then in addition, through the Clean Power Alliance, we were able to receive a $250,000 potential reimbursement for the conversion to the electrical component. So it was an energy reimbursement program that they have. And so that is also another discount that we're receiving on that project, which will allow us to return up to $250,000 worth of those funds back to the general fund. So overall, under budget.
And are there any contentious change orders, or is everything pretty much, well, you found something that we didn't expect, or? Good question.
We have avoided major change orders. So we've been working very collaboratively with the contractor. There were some concerns about getting some of the switchgear equipment because of long lead times, and so that was a bullet that we were able to dodge for long lead times. We have worked through a number of mechanical routing challenges through the attic area, but we're able to overcome those at minimal cost increases. So, but the good news is that we haven't found anything substantial in there. Knock on wood, that has been a significant game changer. We knew we'd find things when we opened up walls in the ceiling, but
My
nothing
question
really
is
big.
less about were there changes, and are there changes that you're fighting about, or are they just, the structure didn't look like we thought it was going, the stuff that you're going to approve, or is there stuff that you're rejecting? Like with the bathrooms, you had big problems with the bathrooms. I'm trying to, determine, are we having anything like that, or are you anticipating a smooth rest of the project?
What I'll say about that is we have a qualified contractor.
Okay. Okay. Next topic. The Kelly Courts. Can you pull up the slide with the Kelly Courts?
Absolutely. Andrew?
And my first question is, what has changed about the layout, the current layout, versus what we have on what you're showing?
There's been no change. This was actually the image that we showed at study session last April.
But this is not what's there now?
Okay. You want to know what the changes are of what
Yes.
exactly we're going to do?
Versus what's out there now.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. So the biggest change that we have to do to meet dimensional updates or requirements are the top side. So the west side has to get wider. So we have to move it closer to the batting cages. And the light posts need to be removed from the inside of the pickleball court. So the light posts are being moved, and we're moving the fencing. And then the other piece that we're doing is we're moving, there's a kind of a small wall and a step between the basketball court and the pickleball courts. we're actually moving that concrete slab to the right or to the north, so that we make the pickleball court slightly longer and slightly wider, that then also allow us to enhance the dimensional requirements for the tennis court. And so there are a few dimensional changes that happen. The basketball courts actually had some additional room to work with, but we had to really kind of move the fencing alignments to adjust and update the pickleball, the tennis courts, and then we would also be providing a real ADA path from the parking lot along the west side of the basketball court to the pickleball court, so that you no longer need to go down the step between the basketball and the pickleball courts.
Okay. Are the pickleball courts now in roughly the same location that they're shown on this plan?
Yes, they would largely be in the same place.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if you're flip-flopping.
Yeah, no, the layout wouldn't change. The plan was really 4 courts, restore 4 courts, in roughly the same place. It's really the dimensional offsets
Okay.
that have
So-
to get adjusted.
Substantially, this project is a few tweaks to make the courts dimensionally correct, and that's it. There's no program change to this.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, because the council is making it seem like we're making a major change because only 2 courts have been active. And it's very disturbing to me that this plan has been in front of the council multiple times, and they're treating it like they've never seen or heard it before. So that gets into my bigger issue of what do we do, or how can we prevent this from happening again? Meaning preventing council from deciding what they want when we're ready to, when we spent all the money for design, bidding, et cetera, and we're ready to award, and then you decide, oh, that's not what I want, I didn't pay attention, and now I want something different. So we're going to throw away everybody's work.
So what I'll say is we are always open to enhancing our process and getting communication out. However, staff has been very clear that we were going to restore 4 courts throughout the duration of this.
I
And so-
understand that, and I'm not, you and I have
Right,
talked
but-
about this offline, and I've looked at former meetings, and everybody who says they didn't know, knew, or they weren't paying attention. But my question is, do we need to have, whether it's staff, council, and commissioners form a committee to determine how to, at what stage and for what types of projects do we bring this up to council early so they feel like they've, have been informed, even though they are being informed, so that this doesn't happen again, because it's just going to keep happening.
Right. No, and I think it's a good question, and it's also our concern as well. I mean, we want the community to be happy with the projects that we're advancing. We have limited staff bandwidth to work on any of these projects, and so every hour that we put into one of these projects is critical. We can't, and if we have to do it twice, it means that something else gets delayed because of it. And so we do have to be very careful with our time. I think we are always open as staff to look at different ways to get the word out and work with groups to build consensus and advance projects. I think the challenge will be is what is the balance of doing that in the overall potential delay to schedule for projects. If there are additional steps, which we're happy to do, different stops at commissions or different community meetings, we're happy to do it, but they do take more time. And so ultimately, how do we get to the end, and what level is required for different types of projects? For example, if it's the Bard Street storm drain project, it might not require as much outreach as maybe something like this, where there's more heavily used by the community and directly impact certain users or nearby residents. So I think we're open to ideas, because we want to be successful in all of them and have the community feel that we're listening to them and finding projects that are successful and accommodating as needed.
So, I mean, my and again, it's going to vary depending on the project, but a project like this, which, again, I think it's ridiculous because we're just putting back what was there more or less, or basically making what was there code compliant. But for kind of the high visibility projects that at some point after schematic design, that I mean, I guess is part of your report at council, you have to make a presentation saying, this is the project, this is what we're going to do. You know, if you have any comments, speak now or forever hold your peace, because I don't want to hear it when we're coming in with, you know, with bids that are substantially under budget. And now those bids are gone. So I don't know, but I think that needs to be formalized somehow, because if we don't, I think that the council is just going to do the same thing over and over.
Can I comment?
Yes.
A couple of things. First of all, we've had quite a bit of change in city council. So some of these projects maybe were developed before some of the new people are on board. Also, I think when a project comes up like this, it's the people involved, like the people involved in pickleball, need to reach out to their own council people. Each project really needs the community support for community projects. And oftentimes, that does the trick, where they are the ones to be present to support whatever project's coming up.
But I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on this specific project because, and I'm not like trying to make I'm just going to explain my position in that, you know, back before COVID, they had a whole committee to determine what were the pickleball rules going to be. And after that, pretty much everybody was a little unhappy. The residents wanted less pickleball, the pickleball players wanted more pickleball. So it was probably a pretty good agreement, and they had agreed to it. And now, because we're moving a fence and some lights, they want to relook at that issue. And I think, you know, that's a settled issue, and, you know, they're just getting another bite at the apple. You know, so on this particular issue, I don't see the need to go back and re-adjudicate the whole thing. I get what you're saying, and if we were installing new pickleball courts, or if we were taking that tennis court away and putting 4 more in, absolutely, you're changing the use. But in this case, I just don't see the need. So anyway, it makes me crazy because my day job, I bid projects for a living, and when I see all the work that all the contractors did to bid the project get thrown in the garbage because, in my mind, council wasn't paying enough attention, it's a travesty. Everyone spent tens of thousands of dollars to bid a project, and it's just thrown away because for no good reason. So I would like to come up with a way to resolve that in the future, and you know, I think, and council needs to be a part of that. I know Councilmember Detoy had a future agenda item a ways back to talk about how to get the commissions more involved. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that we need to move forward with something or propose something so that this doesn't keep happening.
Let me weigh in just a little. I think there is room for improvement, and I agree with your comments about this particular example with the Kelly Court, and I question the extent to which it means we need a wholesale look in the mirror, but certainly there's room for improvement. In some ways, we've had some natural improvement because Joe has been called upon to present things to council informally at the beginning of council meetings, so that has been at least an additional opportunity. Generally speaking, the earlier we can communicate things like the scope of a project and be vigilant for changes in scope, or the concept of a project, or perhaps preliminary design, those are certainly good opportunities because it costs, you know, it's early in the process. So I agree, it's worth having a conversation about what we can do better, but in some ways I think we are doing better, and we just need to be really vigilant about communicating.
Does anybody have anything else on the CIP status report? All right, moving on to commissioner comments. Response for public comments, we had none. Brief announcements, anyone? Reports on liaison or subcommittee roles.
I would just like to thank the Public Works for supporting us in the parade and allowing us to ride on the wonderfully decorated cherry picker. And I understand that the guys actually designed the panels that were put on there, and we should consider that as one of our art projects. It was wonderful. And thank you for doing that again for us.
I attended the civics facilities, I don't know what we're calling it, it's not really a committee, but meeting on Monday. We were talking about different options for financing. Nothing to really report there. Any other comments on matters within the subject matter of jurisdiction of the commission?
I'll just chime in that I think that discussion that we just had a little bit about process and communicating, in some ways could have also fit under 9D, not to nitpick, but you know, I think we kind of accomplished something under 9D in a sense. So thanks for bringing it up, Scott.
All right, consent calendar. We have one item on the consent calendar. I have a discussion or a motion.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Andrew, can we get a vote?
Okay, voting should be open, and I will call Commissioner Britton. How do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Closing the vote, motion passes, consent calendar is approved.
All right, public hearings, we already did. Matters for commission consideration, we already did. Oh, I think I skipped, did I skip public comment? I did skip public comment. So there's public comment at the beginning, there's public comment at the end. Do we have anybody online for public comment? Well, actually, we don't do online public comment for.
Yeah, we, for general public comments is only in chambers.
So seeing nobody in chambers, we move on to adjournment. Thank you, everybody.